come together to help humanity. Colleagues, our task was to build on the foundations that others have laid for us. And I tell you, what we have built together will stand the test of time. Future generations may not know your names, but they will owe every single one of you a debt of gratitude. We leave Dubai with our heads held high, and our work goes on. In unity, and solidarity, we will walk the new path that the UAE consensus has set for the world. Together, we will follow our North Star. We will follow it from here to Baku to Belém. And together, we will secure the future of this beautiful planet for the many generations to come. And let me finish by saying this. I hope that the spirit of partnership, inclusivity, and peace that has welcomed you here in the UAE goes with you from this place and lives for the good of all humanity. I thank you. I thank you for this historic achievement, and allow me to say one more time, if it wasn't for your collective effort, we would not have been able to achieve this historic achievement. I thank you again. Executive Secretary Simon, I invite you to take the floor.
Excellencies, delegates, colleagues, friends. I want to start by thanking the United Arab Emirates for hosting us and for all they have sought to achieve. We needed this COP to send crystal clear signals on several fronts. We needed a global green light signaling it's all systems go on renewables, climate justice, and resilience. On this front, COP28 delivered some genuine strides forward, tripling renewables and doubling energy efficiency. A framework for the global goal on adaptation, operationalizing the Loss and Damage Fund, and making an initial down payment. At every stage, climate action must strive forward, side by side, with human development, dignity, and opportunity. There will be reams of analysis of all the initiatives announced here in Dubai. They are a climate action lifeline, not a finish line. Now all governments and businesses need to turn these pledges into real economy outcomes without delay. COP28 also needed to signal a hard stop to humanity's core climate problem, fossil fuels and their planet-burning pollution. Whilst we didn't turn the page on the fossil fuel era in Dubai, this outcome is the beginning of the end. These climate conferences are, of course, a consensus-based process, meaning all parties must agree on every word, every comma, every full stop. This is not easy. It's not easy at all. Indeed, it underscores just how much these UN conferences have achieved in recent decades. Without them, we would be headed for close to 5 degrees of warming, an open and shut death sentence for our species. We're currently headed for just under 3 degrees. This still equates to mass human suffering, which is why COP28 needed to move the needle further. The global stocktake showed us clearly that progress is not fast enough, but undeniably it is gathering pace. I firmly believe this is because the political and economic logic is increasingly insurmountable. Human lives in huge numbers are being lost in every country, while fossil fuels hit household budgets and national budgets alike. Whilst there are vast benefits of bolder climate action, more security, stability and protection for 8 billion people, more jobs, greater economic growth, less pollution and better health, more empowerment of women as powerful agents of change, more harnessing of nature and its best custodians. Which brings me to what comes next. This is very clear. We must get on with the job of putting the Paris Agreement to full work. In early 2025, countries must deliver new nationally determined contributions. Every single commitment on finance, adaptation and mitigation must bring us in line with a 1.5 degree world. Countries must prepare and submit their first ever biennial transparency reports by the end of next year. As UN climate change, we will keep working to improve the process and help parties go further, faster and fairer. I want to pay tribute to all my colleagues at UN Climate Change for their unfailing professionalism and commitment. Colleagues, I thank you for doing everything possible to keep us on the straight and narrow, and always with one eye on our planet, quite literally around the clock. Delegates, you deserve the support you need to have all information, facts and facilities available in a good working order. So allow me to also flag that UN climate change is now creaking under the weight of mandated processes and work streams. Through the first global stocktake, many parties called for various work programs, bodies, processes and stakeholders to immediately step up their support in response to the GST outcome, helping enable more ambition and implementation of NDCs. Our budget is currently less than half funded, and so I ask you to address this. Otherwise, it will be impossible to fulfill parties' core requirements and expanded demands going forward. My final message is to ordinary people everywhere, raising their voices for change. Every one of you is making a real difference. In the crucial coming years, your voices and determination will be more important than ever. So I urge you never to relent. Delegates, friends, we are still in this race. We will be with you every single step of the way. I thank you. Shukran.
Thank you, Simon. I see parties have requested the floor. May I ask your indulgence to allow me to first adopt other key decisions, then I will give you the floor. I thank you for your understanding. I invite the CMA to consider Agenda Item 5, Work Programme on Just Transition Pathways referred to in the relevant paragraphs of Decision 1/CMA.4. At their plenary meetings on 6 December, the subsidiary bodies forwarded this matter for further guidance. I requested Marianne Carlson and Simon Cardy to undertake consultations on my behalf to conclude the work. I invite the CMA to adopt the draft decision entitled Work Programme on Just Transition Pathways referred to in the relevant paragraphs of Decision 1/CMA.4 contained in document FCCA/PA/CMA/2023/L.14. Hearing no objections. Okay. I propose this work programme is referred to as the UAE Just Transition Work Programme. I invite the CMA to consider Agenda Item 6, Sharm el-Sheikh Mitigation, Ambition and Implementation Work Programme referred in Decision 4/CMA.4. At their plenary meetings on 6 December, the subsidiary bodies forwarded this matter for further guidance. I requested Carlos Fuller and Kay Harrison to undertake consultations on my behalf to conclude the work. In addition, ministerial consultations on issues related to mitigation were conducted by Her Excellency Minister Grace Fu and His Excellency Minister Aspen Barth-Aid. I invite the CMA to adopt the draft decision entitled Sharm el-Sheikh Mitigation, Ambition and Implementation Work Programme referred in Decision 4/CMA.4 contained in document FCCA/PA/CMA/2023/L.16. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the CMA to consider Agenda Item 8, Matters Relating to Adaptation, Sub-Items 8A, Glasgow Sharm el-Sheikh Work Programme on the Global Goal on Adaptation referred to in Decision 7/CMA.3. At their plenary meeting on 6 December, the subsidiary bodies forwarded this matter for further guidance. I requested the chairs of the subsidiary bodies to conduct consultations on my behalf on specific issues within the Global Goal on Adaptation. In addition, ministerial consultations on issues related to adaptation were conducted by Her Excellency Minister Maysa Rojas and Her Excellency Minister Jennifer McAllister. I invite the CMA to adopt draft decision entitled Glasgow Sharm el-Sheikh Work Programme on the Global Goal on Adaptation referred to in Decision 7/CMA.3 contained in document FCCA/PA/CMA/2023/L.18. I invite the CMA to adopt draft decision entitled Presidency Youth Climate Champion as contained in FCCA/CMA.13/F3C/CMA.2023/L.15. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I propose to call the decisions we have adopted: the Loss and Damage Funding Arrangement and Fund, the Global Stocktake, the Work Programme on Just Transition, the Mitigation Work Programme, Global Goal on Adaptation, Youth Climate Champion as the UAE Consensus. Allow me now to turn to the floor. I see a request from Samoa. Samoa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, let me thank you and your team, as well as the Secretariat, for all your hard work. We didn't want to interrupt the standing ovation when we came into the room, but we are a little confused about what happened. It seems that you just gavelled the decisions and the small island developing states were not in the room. We were working hard to coordinate the 39 small island states, developing states that are disproportionately affected by climate change, and so we were delayed in arriving here. So allow me, Mr. President, to deliver the statement that we were going to deliver before this text was adopted before us. EOSIS at the beginning of this COP had one objective: to ensure that 1.5 is safeguarded in a meaningful way. Our leaders and ministers have been clear. We cannot afford to return to our islands with the message that this process has failed us. This first GSD is of particular significance. It is the only GSD that matters for ensuring that we can still limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. The draft text you have presented to us contains many good elements. We see strong references to the science, complemented by a clear runway with milestones for strengthening party efforts to prepare and submit enhanced NDCs through to 2025. We also welcome the establishment of the Technology Implementation Programme. These elements are important. The questions we have considered as the Alliance of Small Island States is whether they are enough. Zoning in on paragraph 26 and 29 of this decision, we have come to the conclusion that the course correction that is needed has not been secured. We have made an incremental advancement over business as usual, when what we really needed is an exponential step change in our actions and support. Mr. President, in paragraph 26, we do not see any commitment or even an invitation from parties to peak emissions by 2025. We reference the science throughout the text and even in this paragraph, but then we refrain from an agreement to take the relevant action in order to act in line with what the science says we have to do. It is not enough for us to reference the science and then make agreements that ignore what the science is telling us we need to do. This is not an approach that we should be asked to defend. Mr. President, on paragraph 28, we are exceptionally concerned that this does not do what we need. In subpara 28D, the exclusive focus on energy systems is disappointing. We are concerned that paragraphs 28E and H potentially take us backward rather than forward. In subpara E, we are being asked to endorse technologies that could result in actions that undermine our efforts. In subpara H, we see a litany of loopholes. It doesn't deliver on a subsidy phase-out, and it doesn't advance us beyond the status quo. Mr. President, on paragraph 11, we have requested repeatedly that this be moved to the preamble to be in line with the Paris Agreement. We do not want to renegotiate the Paris Agreement. This reasonable request has been ignored. We do not consider para 11 to have any effect on the obligations and benefits contained in the Paris Agreement and Convention on the Special Circumstances of the SIDS and LDCs. Mr. President, we must leave here with a set of decisions that meet the magnitude of the climate crisis, that meet the expectations that the world has of us, and that meet what is needed to secure the future of the coming generations. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Samoa. We understand your concern and we take note of your statement and will reflect it in this report. On the 7th review of the financial mechanism, Ambassador Tosi Mapano conducted consultations on my behalf on the way forward regarding the proposal from the United States on the 7th review of the financial mechanism. I will turn back to the floor. Pakistan, you have the floor. Pakistan.
Thank you, Excellency. Excellency, Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by complimenting the COP presidency for closing successfully a historic COP. Bringing consensus to such critical, historic and momentous decision-making speaks of the leadership skills, commitment, integrity of purpose, and perseverance of the COP President. Thank you, sir. Excellency, please allow me to share a personal anecdote. This summer, when I was talking to my son, I told him this is the hottest summer we are going through, and his reply was, "No, Dad, this is the coolest summer we are living. The next one is going to be worse." Our future generation is losing hope. But ladies and gentlemen, 14 days of continuous engagement with my colleagues gives me a new hope, the hope that we can still make this planet a better place for our generations to come. I take with me a sense of support, a sense of commitment, shared responsibility, respect for each country's needs, and unity in fighting the common challenge of climate change. The journey, ladies and gentlemen, from rhetoric to reality is difficult but not impossible, and we are witnessing it right now. I reassure this August forum of our fullest commitment and devotion in meeting the targets set in the Paris agreements and building towards a better tomorrow for all of us. Before I end, I would want to thank the COP presidency, the government of UAE, UNFCCC management, and most importantly, entire support staff, interpreters, staff on duty, security staff, who were there 24/7 to support us. They definitely need a big round of applause. I thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Pakistan. May I ask Brazil to take the floor? Brazil, you have the floor.
Agradeço imensamente aos Emirados Árabes Unidos e, em especial, ao presidente da COP pela grande hospitalidade, pelo firme e dedicado empenho de ter nos trazido até aqui. Agradeço igualmente ao papel desempenhado pela sociedade civil, representada em todos os setores, nos fazendo fortes cobranças para nos lembrar do sentido de urgência nas decisões que aqui tomarmos. Estamos agora em condições de aprovarmos um acordo basilar que dá continuidade aos compromissos que assumimos no âmbito do Acordo de Paris. O compromisso que estamos assumindo aqui redireciona nossas ambições, mas também nossas responsabilidades. O nosso comprometimento em todas as suas dimensões: mitigação, adaptação e meios de implementação. Alinhados a 1.5 são agora incontornáveis. Nós estamos felizes da decisão do estabelecimento de uma troika Emirados Árabes Unidos, Azerbaijão e Brasil para fazermos, nestes 2 anos, o que a ciência nos diz, ser a última janela de oportunidade para redirecionar nossas ações para 1.5. Como disse o presidente Lula nos seus discursos no início dessa COP, não podemos sair daqui sem a firme decisão de enfrentar o debate sobre o ritmo lento da descarbonização do planeta e trabalhar por uma economia menos dependente de combustíveis fósseis. A nossa próxima tarefa é alinhar os meios de implementação e necessários, assegurando a fundamental premissa da transição justa. É fundamental que os países desenvolvidos tomem a dianteira na transição rumo ao fim dos combustíveis fósseis e assegure os meios necessários para os países em desenvolvimento poderem implementar suas ações de mitigação e adaptação. O desafio de concretizar a missão 1.5 depende do esforço de todos e, principalmente, no comprometimento de todos em alinhar suas próximas NDCs a este objetivo. E o Brasil se sente feliz e honrado em ajudar nesta tarefa em que quem sabe, podermos celebrar juntos na COP30 na Amazônia, em Belém do Pará. Muito obrigada.
Thank you, Brazil. May I ask the United States to take the floor?
Thank you, Mr. President. That's on. Mr. President, I want to first thank the entire UAE team and all the other parties in the Secretariat for the extraordinary work over the past 2 weeks to finalize this first global stocktake. I think as you look around this room and you look at the number of people who are here, it underscores the complications, the difficulties, the fundamental challenge of bringing 200 countries together and finding consensus. I think that everybody here should be pleased that in a world of Ukraine and the Middle East war and all the other challenges of a planet that is foundering, this is a moment where multilateralism has actually come together and people have taken individual interests and attempted to define the common good. That is hard. It's the hardest thing in diplomacy. It's the hardest thing in politics. And I think everybody here should feel good that while all of us can find a paragraph or sentences or sections where we would have said it differently, where we would have liked it not to appear, we would have liked something else to appear. But in a multilateral venue, to have as strong a document as has been put together, I find, is cause for optimism, cause for gratitude, and cause for some significant congratulations to everybody here. I am in awe of the spirit of cooperation that has brought everybody together. And I think the applause that we just saw for the AOSIS states is a clarion call to all of us about our obligation and responsibility over these next months to make sure we're reaching as far as we can to implement as fast as we can. So I thank the UAE team and the Secretariat for pulling everybody together, for having the courage to put some things on the table for the first time ever. It is a document that reflects 2 years of work by all parties with over 700,000 pages of inputs from every constituency from every part of the globe. And I'd particularly like to thank two individuals, Farhan Akhtar and Harold Winkler, who sort of quietly behind the scenes provided leadership in the technical assessment over the last 18 months. Now, while nobody here will see their views completely reflected in a consensus document of so many nations, the fact is that this document sends very strong messages to the world. First, the document highlights that we have to adhere to keeping 1.5 degrees within reach. That is the North Star. And we, therefore, must do those things necessary to keep the 1.5, everything we can to achieve this goal. And in particular, it states that our next NDCs will be aligned with limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. I think everyone has to agree. This is much stronger and clearer as a call on 1.5 than we have ever heard before. And it clearly reflects what the science says. To keep 1.5 degrees within reach, we have to urgently peak greenhouse gas emissions and reduce them by a minimum of 43% by 2030 and 60% by 2035. That is a goal that can keep us on track. The direction to triple renewable energy, double energy efficiency, phase down unabated coal power, halt and reverse deforestation and degradation by 2030, and substantially reduce non-CO2 emissions by 2030 are all foundational to our efforts for the next 7 years and beyond. And for the first time in the history of our regime, the decision, supported by all nations of the world, calls for transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems so as to achieve net zero by 2050. That is clear. And we would have liked clearly, many people here would have liked clearer language about the need to begin peaking and reducing fossil fuels in this critical decade. But we know this was a compromise between many parties. In particular, we would highlight that the use of any transitional fuels needed to be aligned with 1.5 degrees, which means if people adhere to that, that they will play a limited and temporary role in facilitating the effort to largely phase out fossil fuels in our energy systems by 2050, with abatement technologies focusing on hard-to-abate sectors. On adaptation, COP28 has successfully delivered a framework for the global goal on adaptation that will provide critical momentum to accelerate actions and increase resilience. It sets out in much greater detail how we will pursue and achieve the global goal on adaptation and how those efforts will be supported in coming years. On finance, this outcome makes abundantly clear that we must transform the international financial system to pursue and achieve our climate goals. The global stocktake underscores that we must continue to drive investments in climate action at all levels, put policies in place to incentivize change, and shift finance away from the things that put our shared prosperity at risk. And it makes clear that we will stand by and support our partners in developing countries every step of the way as they take ambitious steps to build clean energy systems and resilient futures for everyone. Mr. President, both the Paris Agreement and the global stocktake decision that we just adopted emphasized the importance of preparing and updating long-term strategies to reduce emissions and enhance resilience. 2 years ago, the United States and China committed in our Shanghai joint statement to update our long-term strategies by the Glasgow COP, which we both did. Most recently, we both issued the Sunnyland Statement, which we hope made a positive contribution to this COP. And today, I would join with Xi Jinping and Chinese delegation in announcing that the United States and China both intend, based on the many initiatives set out in the global stocktake decisions, we will again update our long-term strategies, and we invite other parties to join us in doing so. This decision and other key decisions of the CMA, including the Global Goal on Adaptation, establish critical work going forward to give effect to the global stocktakes recommendations. We look forward to working with all of our partners here to achieve these ambitions. And again, I say how deeply impressive I believe this multilateral effort is. I thank everybody here. The spirit of cooperation is palpable and significant, and I think a major statement by all countries participating about what we would like to see in so many other sectors of global relationships in this day and age. I thank all for the efforts here and for what we have accomplished. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, US. May I invite Bangladesh. Bangladesh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency, for giving Bangladesh the floor, and let me first congratulate you and your team for the excellent work. If you recall, if I may share a personal conversation that I had with you when you visited Bangladesh towards the beginning of the year, I had said that this COP was going to be a litmus test for multilateralism. And I had also flagged the issue that the UN process, as it is currently structured, relies on consensus. And we also don't have an approved terms of reference for the entire COP process. It's been over 30 years, but still we have not been able to agree. So those were constraints. And I think what is perhaps one of the most impressive parts of this COP is, unlike in the past when we have all tried to hide behind the term consensus, we have tried to use that to protect our national positions. This is the first time that we have perhaps come out of our respective comfort zones and tried to look at the bigger picture. And we have all along said that consensus has to be on the basis of science. When the first draft was presented, we expressed, and we didn't mince words, that we were extremely disappointed because it didn't capture the ambition, and the North Star that you had talked about, I said, was now hiding behind dark clouds. I think over the last 2 days, thanks to the work and your initiative and that of your team, and our collective will, because at the end of the day, this is a member-driven process, and we have to really decide what we want to achieve. We have been able to remove those clouds. And what I see as significant is that this is the 28th COP. Between COP1 and COP27, we basically moved from one COP to the other. And here I think we have not just transitioned, there is a potential of a game-changing outlook in terms of how we look at the COP processes, and we thank you, your leadership and the team in that regard. The 1.5 degrees Celsius goal, and we have made it abundantly clear, this is not a political ask. This is not countries such as Bangladesh, LDCs, and climate vulnerable countries are asking for. It's not a political statement. It is the absolute upper limit that science tells us we can go to. And we feel that this then shapes the entire discourse in terms of mitigation, adaptation, funding, loss and damage, the entire chain. And let us not forget that the better we are at keeping temperature increase to within 1.5, the lesser will be the resources needed for adaptation. The lighter will be the burden on loss and damage. So this is critical. And as we unpack the text of the GST, I'm sure there will be issues which will require further clarification, which will require further discussion. And that the fundamental principle that we are going to have is the 1.5. So this is the spirit that we take out from here. When you convened the Majlis, Your Excellency, I think you used the words to the effect that we come in here with problems, with solutions, with fears, with apprehensions, and we want to go out of the Majlis with a solution. I think we are on the path to a solution through COP28, and again, we thank you for your initiative. Trust, solidarity is going to be absolutely imperative. Even if we had the perfect text, and we know that no text can be perfect, and this text is also not perfect, but it lays the foundation. Given continued trust, given continued goodwill, given continued empathy, given continued solidarity, we can build on it. And I think that is what we take back. Of course, we would have liked more specificity, more concrete steps. Adaptation is really a life and death issue for a lot of parties who are represented around the table. We cannot compromise on adaptation. We cannot compromise on lives and livelihoods. So the finance delivery, rather than just reporting what has been done, should actually be geared towards action to delivering the resources that we need. And that is absolutely fundamental. So as we go back with certainly better spirits, we also have to keep in mind that the real test is delivery on this. And if I may say so, we came to UAE and we looked upon it as the Asia COP. We wanted to show that not just UAE, but Asia can also deliver. And I think all of us, and I thank all of the delegates that we have been able to do that. At least we have got off to a start. This is not the finish line. We have started on a line where everyone starts together. And I think this is the real achievement of this COP. UAE, as we know, and Dubai is a city of dreams. The impossible comes true. And this is a nation that was diving for pearls for thousands of years. And you are now reaching for the furthest stars in the galaxy. Let us also reach for that. And I believe that this COP is really going to set the tone for all future COPs. Let us have that trust. Let us have that empathy. Let us have that solidarity so that we can, in fact, when we look back at this COP, 5 or 10 years from now, we can say that this was indeed, in delivery, a game-changing COP. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Bangladesh. I'd like to invite Bolivia to take the floor. Bolivia, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Bolivia habla en su posición nacional. Hemos cumplido 8 años desde la adopción del Acuerdo de París. El año 2015, la comunidad global decidió abordar la lucha contra la crisis climática con base en la equidad, con base en la diferenciación entre países desarrollados y países en desarrollo. Sin embargo, estos 8 años, los países desarrollados han trabajado intensamente para erosionar y borrar estos principios y transferir sus obligaciones vinculantes a los países en desarrollo. Al adoptar hoy la decisión del primer balance global, declaramos con gran pesar y enorme preocupación que los principios de la Convención y del Acuerdo de París se han deteriorado y disminuido un poco más. Bolivia no apoya y nunca apoyará la profundización de un mundo más injusto e inequitativo para luchar contra la crisis climática. Más capitalismo y más mercados no son la solución para los problemas que se derivan del capitalismo y los mercados. Más inequidad e injusticia no son la solución para los problemas de la inequidad y la injusticia en el mundo. No podemos apoyar resultados que lleven al mundo hacia una nueva era de implementación de la Convención y el Acuerdo de París sin equidad, sin responsabilidades comunes pero diferenciadas, sin diferenciación entre países desarrollados y países en desarrollo y sin medios de implementación y financiamiento concretos para los países en desarrollo. Los países desarrollados no han asumido tomar la iniciativa en la lucha contra la crisis climática, no aceptan cambiar sus estilos de vida y esto pone en mayor riesgo la vida de las personas en nuestra parte del mundo. Hablamos mucho de 1.5 grados, hablamos mucho de ciencia, pero los países desarrollados que tienen planes de expansión de los combustibles fósiles hacia el 2050 van en contra de la ciencia misma, de la que están hablando. En el mundo real, señor presidente, la estrella polar está cada vez más fuera de nuestro alcance. Es importante mantener vivo 1.5 grados, esto es importante para la humanidad y para la defensa de la madre tierra. Pero ¿cómo vamos a lograr esto sin diferenciación, sin compromisos vinculantes para trabajar en el marco de la equidad? Para ser equitativos y para trabajar con un mundo equitativo, los países desarrollados deberían haber propuesto alcanzar 0 combustibles fósiles ahora, en esta plenaria, pero posponen sus compromisos para el año 2050. Los países desarrollados responsables de la gran expansión en el mundo de la producción de combustibles fósiles son ahora los campeones de la estrella polar. Son los campeones de mantener 1.5 grados a nuestro alcance. Los países desarrollados hablan mucho de financiación, de que no hay financiación para el cambio climático, pero ponen enormes cantidades de dinero para financiar una enorme maquinaria industrial y para la guerra en el planeta. Los países desarrollados hablan mucho de derechos humanos mientras provocan el genocidio de nuestros hermanos de Palestina. Los países desarrollados hablan mucho de su mayor ambición en la lucha contra la crisis climática, ante la mirada de los medios de comunicación, pero en las salas de negociación de esta conferencia simplemente están obstruyendo, creando distorsión, confusión y añadiendo complejidad a todas las cuestiones que son prioritarias para los países en desarrollo. Los países desarrollados, en lugar de cumplir sus promesas, han optado por no respetar los acuerdos internacionales, mientras continúan insistiendo en que se deben imponer más reglas y objetivos a los países en desarrollo, aumentando el colonialismo, la desigualdad, la injusticia, el hambre y la pobreza en el mundo. Imponer objetivos para todos para el año 2050 va en contra del Acuerdo de París y refuerza el camino del colonialismo, creando mayores dependencias institucionales y financieras de los países del sur con respecto a los países del norte. Nos resistimos, presidente, a ser nuevamente víctimas de un nuevo colonialismo, que es el colonialismo de carbono. Nos resistimos a ser tratados como personas y países que carecemos de nuestro derecho al desarrollo. Se necesita un cambio de paradigma, presidente. Es necesario cambiar el paradigma actual de los países desarrollados que está basado en la procrastinación, el colonialismo, la injusticia climática y la injusticia social. Tenemos que cambiar un nuevo paradigma basado en la cooperación, la solidaridad internacional, en la equidad y en la provisión de medios de implementación. Bolivia, presidente, acompaña el consenso de la declaración del pacto del primer balance global con la siguiente reserva. Bolivia hace una reserva a los artículos de la decisión del primer balance global que contravienen la implementación del Acuerdo de París en el marco de la operacionalización de los principios de equidad y responsabilidades comunes pero diferenciadas, así como el artículo 4.7 de la Convención y la provisión de financiamiento y medios de implementación, así como los artículos 9, 10 y 11 del Acuerdo de París y, en particular, el artículo 4, párrafo 5. Bolivia hace una reserva en particular al artículo 28 del primer balance global, porque no incorpora los principios de equidad y responsabilidades comunes pero diferenciadas de la Convención y del Acuerdo de París. No existe ninguna referencia a la diferenciación entre países desarrollados y países en desarrollo, y al hecho de que los países desarrollados deben asumir el liderazgo en la lucha contra la crisis climática. Tampoco existe una mención explícita a la provisión de financiamiento y medios de implementación por parte de los países desarrollados para avanzar en las contribuciones de los países en desarrollo hacia el cumplimiento de las metas globales establecidas. Bolivia interpreta que todas las contribuciones del Estado plurinacional de Bolivia al cumplimiento de los esfuerzos globales de lucha contra la crisis climática dependen de la provisión de financiamiento para las metas condicionadas establecidas por el país en su contribución nacionalmente determinada en el marco de la implementación del enfoque del vivir bien en armonía con la madre tierra. Pedimos que esta declaración se incorpore en los reportes de esta reunión. Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you, Bolivia. Thank you, Bolivia. Colleagues, dear parties, may I ask you to keep your statements short, please? May I ask that you maintain a cap of 3 minutes, please. 3 minutes maximum. And yes, of course, you can submit your statements in writing on the UNFCCC website. And yes, your statements will be reflected in the report. We have a lot of work before us, and I would like to conclude our work in a timely manner. Allow me now to ask the EU. EU, you have the floor.
Let me start by wholeheartedly thanking the Presidency and Dr. Sultan Yu in particular for your leadership, your vision, but also your tremendous tenacity, and that of your team and the team of Simon Steele for all their work and all their contributions. And dear friends, let me also say that we have found it a tremendous privilege to work alongside all of you, from wherever you are, from Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, North America, Asia, the Pacific, and the Middle East. To team up, to bridge the divide, and to unite. Because, dear friends, when we are all long gone, our children, and our children's children, and their children, will be there to deal with all the things we have left for them, the good and the bad. And with them in mind, and with that in mind, it makes this a day of gratitude, a day of solemn satisfaction, and maybe also of silent determination. And a day to salute the fact that humanity has finally done what is long, long, long overdue. 30 years. 30 years we've spent to arrive at the beginning of the end of fossil fuels, and to bridge our ambition on adaptation, finance and mitigation, to get concrete and actionable on 1.5, as scientists have urged us to do for so long. And to all our friends from around the world who will continue to need our help, the islands in particular, I want you to know, and I will say to you, that we will stand with you in unity during this transition for as long as is necessary.